Welcome to the Blending In podcast, where I chat with innovative educators who are integrating EdTech. I'm your host, Ashley Azarlu, and I'm so glad you're listening in today. As teachers, we don't often get the chance to see into the classrooms of our colleagues, but by listening today, you'll get an auditory peek into my fellow IAQ board member, ISTE author, college professor, digital learning specialist, and student data privacy expert, Laurel Kirchhoff. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, that's quite an intro, but thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Ashley.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. Just before we get started, can you tell everybody kind of your background in education and like how you came to be where you are to wear all these amazing titles and hats that you have right now?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a teacher. I have always been a teacher straight out of college. I actually, when I graduated with my bachelor's in criminal justice, all those many, many years ago, I did an internship at a law firm, and I knew it just like that wasn't for me. I was really interested in juvenile justice, and I wanted to be a juvenile justice attorney. But I decided maybe I could help kids before they got into the system, or maybe I could make a difference in a different way. Um, it just wasn't a good fit for me. And so I started teaching middle school, and it was a dream come true. It was just a perfect fit. So I taught middle school history and science for 20 years, and I loved every single minute of it. It was awesome.
I
But
taught middle school too. And when
yeah,
people say, you just said like it's a dream, right? Like people think we're crazy. When we say we like
they
teaching
do.
middle school, it's like, what? Why would you do that? Like,
You know, well, I think there's something for everyone,
this
right?
is true.
Something for everyone. And then when my own kids were in middle school, my own personal children, I did get the other point of view. So I was like,
Okay.
okay. But they fortunately like they grew out of it. And no, but I being a middle school teacher, it just is my heart. I love middle school. So it's for everyone. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine myself teaching like the littles, but I have a
Yeah.
lot of respect for people that do
Same
that.
girl. Same.
Tough gig. That's way harder than teaching middle school.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I'm like, give me a 13-year-old rather than a 3-year-old any day.
Any day of the week, any day of the week. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So
So
that's
you taught for 20 years in middle school. Then how did you transition out of middle school class into other roles?
well, I became an instructional coach. First I went through a leadership academy at my district, and that was just really opened my eyes to some different ways that maybe I could have an impact in education. 20 years is a long time to do anything. So
Mhm.
I was looking for another challenge. I got my admin credential. I became an ed tech coach at my district, which was absolutely amazing. I loved doing that. And then I had an opportunity to go to the County Office of Education, and I was completely overwhelmed and scared by that, but I just took the leap. And I fortunately had an assistant superintendent who gave me some really great advice. And I was sitting in her office, Dr. Lisa Simon. She's amazing, amazing woman, amazing leader. And she was like, Laurel, why do you love being an educator? And I was like, because I love helping kids. I love helping them learn. And she's like, so if you can cast a wider net and help more kids, why would you hesitate? And I was like, oh, okay. So I took the leap, and I was
Yeah.
so grateful for that advice. And
Yeah, that's great advice.
yeah,
Wow.
I didn't look at it like that. I was looking at it through my lens instead of looking at it through my purpose, which is to help kids. And so once I thought of it that way, it was just a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, I think that's when our paths crossed. Like, I think you were working for the county in that digital learning specialist role when we first met. But then since I've known you, you've gone and done so many other things. And I'm always in awe. I'm like, how does she do all of the things that she's doing right now? Like writing books and presenting here and there and everywhere and being a leader in ISTE. Like, I just am so inspired by you all the time. I'm like, how is she just, she's superwoman?
Well, thank you. I feel the same way about you. I feel like, when I switched over to the county office, I had a really, really, really amazing colleague, friend, leader, who pushed me out of my comfort zone further, Dr. Sonal Patel, and she was really
Yes.
a champion for me. She gave me a lot of opportunities to present and to learn, to grow, and honestly, it was a huge leap for me, but I appreciated having a leader like that was really invested in helping me grow professionally, and she did that for me, and so I'm eternally grateful to her. And besides that, I started looking at education through that broader lens instead of I was looking at more at a macro or micro level instead of a macro level. And so I've had these amazing, inspiring leaders that have really helped me along the way. I really feel like that this is an education is a very small world and we support each other a lot. And it becomes the more people you know, the more you're like, I'm constantly amazed by people, and the generosity of fellow educators is incredible. And so I know I wouldn't be where I'm at without the leaders that have helped me along the way.
Yeah, I agree too. There's so many people that have like poured into me and helped me grow and develop in my role and in different roles that I've had in
Yes.
my career. And it's like, I don't know if there's any other profession that kind of takes people under their wing quite like teachers do. Like we're just like naturally like prone to like just how can I help you
Oh, help.
succeed? Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel so fortunate in so many different aspects of my career with amazing, especially and I'm not knocking male leaders at all. I've had some fabulous male leaders, but I've had some incredible female leaders that have really just been a mentor and a guide to me. I think about especially in like the realm of National History Day, California, our state leadership team, Whitney Olson and Craig Irish, they they took me under their wing, taught me everything they know, and then now they trust me to be on the state leadership team. So it's just there's so many people that pay it forward, and I'm excited that now I'm in the position that I can help others and
Yeah.
to continue that cycle, because at the end of the day, it does come back to, are we doing what's best for kids? And how can we
Mm.
continually work together to do what's best for kids? So,
Yes. It makes me think of that phrase, empowered women empower women, right?
uh,
Like totally, totally. And you're actually doing that now as like a professor. So you have students that are learning how to be teachers and you're helping them to be the best that they can for future students, right?
yes, yes, I didn't realize how much I missed actively teaching until I had the opportunity to go to Cal State San Bernardino and work in the Teacher Education Foundation program. And that was I love I didn't realize that piece of my heart was missing, was actually teaching on the regular basis. So that was really cool, and I love doing that. And working with adult learners is very similar and very different to being in the middle school classroom. But it's really fulfilling in a way that I I get to supervise student teachers, and that's amazing to get into the school campuses. I see so many different practices and get to mentor and guide and continually work on my own practice as well, because I know I do not know everything, and I am constantly learning from my students as much as I think they're learning from me, and new practices and keeping current. I think that's it's been definitely a blessing in my own career to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so you recently invited me to guest lecture for one of your classes, which was such an amazing opportunity. Thank you for having me. But the that particular class was geared towards like helping English language learners, right? Like you're
Yes.
helping teachers learn how to support their English language learners. So when we're thinking about blending in literacy for all of our students and English language learners, how are you like helping these future educators learn how to do that, like how to support their English learners in blended learning and in just becoming literate for the world, you know?
I think that's a great question. This is one of my favorite classes to teach. And back in the day, when I got my teaching credential, that my CLAD certificate, because we're in California, uh,
Mhm.
cross language acquisition and development. Maybe it's cross cultural. I'm not sure what CLAD stands for anymore, but it was not embedded into our credential, or at least mine wasn't.
Right.
And so I had these standalone classes that were really in depth about teaching English language learners, and I taught English language learners my entire career. So I focus on really demystifying those best practices or better practices on how we can help students acquire language while keeping a rigorous content for what's cognitively appropriate for them based on their age, not to get too crazy on you, but
Mhm.
want to do this, right? We want our students to acquire English so they can be proficient in our school system, but being a multilingual learner has so many benefits. We don't want to ever abandon their original language. We want to make sure that we're challenging them to learn in multiple ways. So breaking down a lot of those barriers, thinking about universal design for learning is probably the heart of that course. And then looking specifically at the core concepts on how we actually acquire language, how our brains acquire learning, and how we can
Yeah.
marry the two together. But specifically, that class is geared towards secondary teachers. So thinking 6 through 12 or 7 through 12 grades, 7 through 12. And oftentimes students that are already cognitively advanced, but are acquiring a new language. So how can we make sure they don't fall behind in their learning as they're learning new language? And it's a fun class. It's a challenging class. It's an important class. And I'm very, very fortunate to be able to facilitate that. And I think that when we're talking about blending education, there's no better place to provide accessibility than through educational technology blended with traditional methods to allow our students to have access to content and curriculum and language. It's a long
Yes.
answer. A long
No,
answer.
it's
I get
it
very
was so
excited about it.
great. It's a great answer, which actually leads me to my next question. So, as an educator, when you were in the classroom and you were planning these like blended learning activities that included both the technology and the traditional, how did you plan? And I'm also wondering, like, how has that changed since you've been out of the classroom, and how are you directing people who are going into the classroom now to be able to plan effectively for those types of activities?
That's such a great question, Ashley, because I think some things have changed and some things have stayed the same. With me, with anything with ed tech, any type of blended learning, the heart of it is the why. Why are we using this ed tech? Why are we using this learning strategy? Is it pedagogically sound? Is this something that really is proven to help our students advance in their learning? Uh, or is it just the latest, greatest fad that's come along and we just want to
Mhm.
use it just to learn alongside our students, which there's definitely a place for that as well. But at the heart of when I think of blended learning, for me at the very beginning, I wasn't never an early adopter of ed tech. I didn't have access to it in my classroom, um, probably before 10 years ago. So it was when I did get access, I was like, oh, I'm all in. But I used the ed tech just to use it, and I didn't have necessarily a learning intention, a success criteria, that teacher clarity behind it.
Yeah.
And that's what's developed as I used more and more blended learning and ed tech in my classroom. And now in my university classes, I'm very cognizant of the how and the why and the modeling for my students, how I use it. So we always look at it through two lenses: their own learning through whatever modality we're using, and then how can they transfer this to what they're doing with their students at their in their content areas, and that's grade level and age and cognitively appropriate, because my
Yeah.
students teach anywhere from TK all the way through 12th grade.
Yeah,
So
I have a very similar approach with doing trainings for adult learners here in my district and doing like instructional coaching things. Anytime I'm planning activities, right? I'm thinking that two kind of mode, like how can I make sure that the participants here are learning what we're, the content that I'm teaching, but then how can I get them to think about how they might transfer that learning into the classroom and use it with their content with their students. So it's like that intentional modeling, I think
yes,
is great, and like hands-on participation with whatever it is.
absolutely. And I also, like I mentioned before, I learn constantly from my students when I see them experimenting in their classrooms as student teachers, when I get onto school campuses and then I see what the teachers are doing. So I'm like constantly taking notes and asking questions and then thinking about how can I iterate what I'm already doing, or is it appropriate, right? This summer I'm planning on redoing all of my syllabi and really rethinking how I'm going to have my students engage with the materials in really more thoughtful and creative ways, now that AI has been out into the world. And so
Yep.
it's really forced me to take a look at what do I really need my students to learn, and how are they going to show and demonstrate to me that they've learned it. And I think when
Yes.
that teacher clarity is the basis of our lesson plan and design, then it all fits together, and then I can appropriately choose the ed tech and the other learning experiences, because it doesn't always have to be ed tech. A lot
Right.
of times it's better to do it good old fashioned manual, right? Like, get out
Yep.
a poster paper and here's some markers.
Yep.
So, and when then I backwards plan from there, but it always has to go back to what are they learning? Why are they learning it? And how are they going to show me that they learned it?
Absolutely. So in thinking about planning those blended learning experiences and picking and choosing different ed tech tools to blend in, what are some of your favorites, like your go-tos that you really like to use in those types of learning activities? And you can throw in traditional methods too, but yeah, what do you like to blend in?
Ooh, I mean, it kind of changes over time as I also become more familiar with other
Hmm.
tools. I have to say, I am so incredibly sad that Google Jamboard is going away, because I love a Jamboard. I love me a Jamboard. And I know there are lots of other great tools out there, and I'm going to swim around in them until my fingers get all pruny this summer. But I love the collaborative easiness of it, of a Jamboard. And but
Yeah.
I love anything that's collaboration for my students. Getting them to talk and dialogue and work together is really important to me, because I do truly think that we're better together and we learn so much from each other. And with my students, they are in all different content areas, like I mentioned, multiple grade levels. So there's a lot of vertical articulation that can happen there, that if they were just sitting with their science friends, or they're just sitting with their,
Yeah.
art fellow art teachers, that they're not going to get. So I really purposely mix them up. I love Mentimeter. I've also loved
Mm,
Slido, which you, I think, turned me on to, which I love. I use that all the time. It's very collaborative, very easy to use. Um,
yeah, I
I
love the Slido.
I love Slido. I just do. It's great. It's a great tool. Um, I tried after I saw you do it. I tried, and that's the other thing too. I go to as much professional development as I possibly can, because there are so many brilliant educators out
Sure.
there that are using ed tech in creative ways that have positive student learning outcomes. And I'm like, oh, let me make a note. I want to try that. So I have to sometimes remind myself to not over excite or oversaturate students either.
Yeah.
For me, my lesson, I always have an SEL check-in. I at the beginning of every lesson, whether
Mhm.
I just asking a question, doing a turn and talk, mixing it up with the groups, because I want them to like settle and get into the right mind space, and also just know that I care about them as people. Plus, it's good modeling for them with their students. So I do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's Slido, sometimes it's Mentimeter, sometimes it would be a Jamboard, but
Mhm.
um, and, and I tend to stay in the Google ecosphere because I'm a Google certified
Yeah.
trainer and I'm going to be a Google innovator. So
Yay.
yeah, it's very exciting. So I tend to stay in the Google ecosphere also because I know that my students have access to that.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
access is a huge issue. So I want to make sure that, so I do use slides and things like that. My other go-tos, well, anything with collaboration, I love having them work and create. I love to use hyperdocs, and hyperdocs have been fantastic. So I'll have them create infographics or take their learning into creative ways using Canva. Um,
Mhm.
there's Canva is just, to me,
It's awesome.
so Canva, you can do everything, right? It's just
Yeah.
amazing. So I love
That might replace your Jamboard, by the way, because Canva has the whiteboard feature.
I know. When I saw that, I was like, okay, Canva, did you like my mind, because this is really cool. And my students are really familiar with Canva, and they're willing. I think the great thing about Canva is it doesn't have such a steep learning curve,
Yeah.
that my students are willing to get in there and play around with it and to see what they can really do. I used it. I mean, there's so many like little add-ons and extras you can use inside of Canva that it's nice. And the Canva, they have tons of educational videos too, and there's
Yes.
a lot there. So Canva definitely speaks my love language.
I know, me too. I love Canva so much. I create so many things in Canva. And what excites me, I'm going to actually be going back to the classroom next year and teaching high school. And I'm actually excited about having students use Canva to see what they produce and like use it to demonstrate their learning of the content in the class. I want to see like what they produce and create with that tool because it's so fantastic. I just love it.
I think that's one. I mean, honestly, if I only had one tool other than Google, because I know Google's like an ecosphere, but if
Right.
I had to pick, I think right now, if I could only pick one tool to have on in my tool belt, it would be Canva. Um,
Same.
as of today, as of the end of
As of
May,
today.
as of today, that can always
Yeah.
change. Yeah,
And you mentioned AI earlier and like how fast it's evolving, right? And well, Canva has some built-in AI, but like who knows what's going to be out a month
my
or two from
gosh.
now? I just can't. It's growing so fast.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the thing that I keep prefacing, like anytime I talk about AI, I'm like, this is as of today, because it has, I mean, just the last 2 years, it's just exploded. I can't even imagine
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the next 6 months. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I know. I can't either. My mind is blown. So I'm planning this full day AI PD that I'm supposed to deliver in August. And I'm like trying to finish it before I go on summer break, but then I'm like, what's going to change over the summer? I'm going to have to go back in like a week before and make updates because I'm sure something's going to grow or change.
Absolutely. It's changing in real time, it just at this rapid pace, and we can only, I someone though the other day they mentioned to me that they were feeling really saturated with AI and feeling like
Yes.
overwhelmed, and they used the term saturated, and I thought that was really interesting. So
Mm,
everywhere I go, it's AI, 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 and I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's easy to get overwhelmed and to feel saturated, and but again, we got to go back to that baseline. Is this what's best for kids? Is this what's
right.
best for their learning? And then is this also, if this is feeling overwhelming for us as educators, yes, we need to stay ahead of the curve, right? Because our students will be using it, whether we want them to or not.
Yes.
Conversation for another day. But also, how can we, protect our boundaries when we're thinking about how can we learn professionally and grow professionally, but also not get saturated and overwhelmed? Because when we get saturated
Yes.
and overwhelmed and shut down, that doesn't benefit anyone.
Yes, yes, that is absolutely right. And that actually kind of makes me think of my going into my next question, but back when I was the first year or two teaching, feeling completely saturated and overwhelmed, and this was like way before all of what we have now. So thinking back to yourself as a first year teacher, what is something that you wish you would have known as a first year teacher, or a piece of advice that you may have for a newer first year, second year teacher?
I think about this a lot when I talk to my student teachers. And so it's kind of funny because I think back and I know how excited I was to have my own classroom, how excited I was to have my students there in front of me. Um, but I think teacher burnout is real. I would go back and tell myself to really, really, really work on two pieces. Number one, my time management skills and having appropriate boundaries for myself. Work hard when you're at work. Set your work hours, and while you're there, give it 100% your all. But when you leave, don't take it with you. And I know I was terrible about that, and I
Yeah.
am. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. So I would tell myself, because we do need that time to teaching as a service profession, and we give
Hmm.
and give, and we need to make sure that we replenish those stores, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I would tell myself that. And the second piece of advice I would tell myself as a first year teacher is to really make sure that I worked on my classroom management, right? Classroom management is everything. Thinking about all of the different things that you have to manage, especially now today with educational technology and logins and passwords and
Mhm.
doing what we're supposed to do, and who doesn't have a cord to charge their device, and how are we dealing with phones in the classroom and all of those things. The classroom management piece, if that's solid, it can also allow for then so we can get into the learning and we can get into all of the fun things that we want to do with our students to help them acquire their learning. So those are the two things I would tell myself: time management, classroom management,
You know what?
and
And
also fall into place.
I'd 100% agree with you. If I was giving advice, the same thing. I'm a big fan of Dave Stewart Jr., who does a lot of stuff around student motivation. And he actually changed the name of classroom management to classroom stewardship. And I
Ooh,
really liked that because we're really stewards of their learning, right? We're trying to help guide them to be better versions of themselves. And rather than, you know, coming off as a more
managing.
managerial, more of like this stewardship idea. And I really, really liked that.
I
So,
like that. I taught a class on creating an inclusive classroom environment this last semester, and I love teaching it. And we changed our rule charts to procedures and agreement charts. So
mm,
I thought, so that kind of goes along those same lines
yeah,
where, what are having procedures, and we being like the teachers being very, very clear on all of those procedures and knowing like how
yep,
it's going to go down. Then when we provide that clarity, a good friend of mine, Barbara Lane, she's a big teacher clarity guru, and she gave me a sticker and it says clear is kind. And I love that sticker because
yes.
it's true. When we're clear with our students, when we're clear with our expectations, when we're clear with our procedures, when we're clear with all of those things, it is kind. It's a kindness to our students,
Mm,
but it's also a kindness to ourselves.
yes. Girl, preach. I mean, can you just preach for me? I mean, I love it so much. Well, Laurel, it has been such a pleasure having you on today and just hearing your insights and your expertise. Like, I'm just so grateful that you decided to join me for this conversation.
I'm so grateful that you asked me. I love talking. You and I could talk forever and ever. So
We could, we could. Well, thanks again, Laurel.
thank you, Ashley.
Thanks for listening to the Blending In podcast. I hope you gleaned some inspiration to blend in EdTech into your instruction. You can find show notes and resources from today's episode on my website, blendinginpodcast.com. If you loved what you heard today, leave a review, follow the podcast on socials, and hit the subscribe button to get notified when new episodes are released. Until next time, don't hesitate to innovate and integrate.